Just like had to make myself realize that, yeah, we did this. It started as an idea, and now it's happening, and now I'm very excited to introduce Sid Jacobson.
Well, it's good to be here with all of you. We're going to have a good time for the next couple of days. I'm going to tell you probably more stories than you ever wanted to hear in your whole life.
I first heard about NLP in 1977 when I was in graduate school, and a friend of mine had just gone to a workshop in New Orleans at the Gestalt Institute in New Orleans, and she just spent the weekend with these two guys named Richard Bandler and John Grinder. So what does NLP Unplugged mean? It means getting back to a little bit about where NLP came from, a little bit about what it's built out of. A lot of NLP trainings have left out a lot of the really good stuff from the old days, like really learning how to pay attention to people, really learning what rapport is built out of, really learning what those eye movements are all about. Pure NLP. Finding out how people work. And I got really turned on by everything she was telling us. So about 4 months later, in February of '78, I went to my first NLP workshop. She's literally going through all the steps in the decision. Well, there's the money, there's the time, do I have this, do I have that, do I have that? And then she gets to a point where obviously this feeling came up. But did you see her doing this with her hand? That's the synesthesia. Here are the things I think people can take away from this workshop. We're going to really work on sensory acuity. People being able to look at and listen to somebody and pick up the essential pieces that they need to understand how that person's doing what they're doing. That's either getting them into trouble, that they need to change, or that's really working for them well, that we can pull out and be able to use for ourselves or other people. But just notice whatever you notice. She's highly visual, and most of the time she will just make a quick picture or two. This time she did it a little bit differently. So when I said, think about your living room, she was repeating the word almost as quickly as I was saying it in her head, but mostly her living room popped up in front of her. The other thing was it was a full representation with depth. It was a little darker than this room too. Just the picture in her head, the room, her living room itself may be very bright, but this picture wasn't very bright. And mostly she saw this part of the room. The edges of the room were kind of out of her field of vision, right? And there was nothing really moving in the room. So it was a little dimmer than I expected it to be in this case with her, because usually her pictures are pretty bright and they're usually up higher. Generally, he goes through much more sequences than most other people in the room do. He's very sequential in his thinking. So he repeated the word living room as well. He looked at the living room. He made a picture over here, but then he adjusted the picture. So he actually was kind of going back and forth between two images. One was just, the one over here was a little closer than this one, but not appreciably, not like dramatically in any way. And they were two like separate pictures. It wasn't like walking around inside the room. It was just like two different views of the room. And as he did that, he had a little different feeling about each one. I don't know if you noticed his body moved just a little bit. And as he was comparing those two pictures, he was doing that. But each one of them was a smaller picture than hers. Didn't have as much depth, flat screen than her pictures. Okay, so he goes up and sees the picture, right? And then she changes the picture. Right? She moves it over so that she can look at it from a couple of different angles. You may not notice, because it's not as obvious with her, that she's talking to herself the whole time she's doing this.
How do you know that?
Magic. And all of you guys noticed all this stuff too, right?
We're going to really look at how states are structured. A lot of people don't really understand what states are. They know they see the way somebody looks in their face, or they hear them talking in some way and they say, oh, that's a state. But there's a neurological piece to states. There's a submodality piece to states. There's the external behaviors that people show. All of these things are built into what a state is really all about. And states are very specific. They're very specific in what they can do, or what somebody can do while they're in that state. So we're going to get very specific about the states that people need to get into. Another thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at strategies. We're really going to look at the depth of strategies, the sequences that people go through that get them from point A to point Z. If you understand strategies, you can get to just about anywhere. Just those two pieces, understanding states and strategies, you can do just about everything there is that people do in NLP, regardless of what techniques they're using. So those are the essential pieces. Imagine there's somebody here and they're attacking you.
Yeah.
Okay, and what happens?
You
see what I mean? He's got a picture that when he breathes in, that picture is coming closer and getting bigger, and whatever that picture is, that's his explanation for why he's safe. Now, we're also going to look at thresholds, which a lot of people don't even know what thresholds are. We're going to look at the swish pattern again, figure out why it works the way that it does. And we're going to put a number of other things together in this and build a whole foundation for what NLP really is. And it'll be fun.
And we can do that in 2 days?
We've got about, 3 days worth of stuff to cover today. We're going to try.
Okay.
We'll have a good time doing it. We could do this all year.